Hello and welcome to the Jolly Ranchers YouTube channel. I am a solo developer making a murder mystery RPG called Kid Detective, and I have come down with repetitive stress wrist injury this week, and it's very sad, honestly. But I got a good wired mouse and an ergonomic keyboard, the Microsoft Sculpt. But that means that this week we're doing a very small video about a very basic main menu that goes along with our save and load system that I did in the last video. So what we'll cover in this video is how to do a new game button, a load game button, and a quit button for your main menu. And to do this, we will learn how to pass information from one scene to another scene using Fungus variables, using the save and load variable commands. It's really easy. You save the variable in one scene and then you load it in the next scene using a variable called the same thing, and it works perfectly fine. So very simple. Let's get started. Okay, so I've prepared a very simple main menu, and I will go into some details about what makes it tick. So it's very simple because we have a new game option. This is what happens if you press new game. You can either choose to start a new game or not. You could load your other game. I don't have save slots or anything like that because this is a very simple main menu. And we have the quit button, which, as you can see, it does not work in the editor, but it will work when we build the game. And I will show you how to do that in this tutorial. And we'll also learn how to pass information from one scene to another in Fungus, which we will do with this new game command. So, very simple. When the game starts, we play music. We fade the text "the best game" onto the screen with this fade UI command, and we set the title to true. We call our menu block, which has these three menu options. In the quit option is just the quit command, which you can find in flow and quit. And as you can see, it says quits the application does not work in editor or web player builds, because you can't press quit and just close the web page. You don't even need to have a quit button if you're making a addicting games style game, and shouldn't generally be used on iOS. If you need help making an iOS game, then head on over to the Discord. I know there have been a few people who have done that using Fungus. Okay, and if we go to the load game, we are going to call a load block, which is just going to set the title, "the best game," to false, and gonna load the scene. It's not gonna load our scene, which is named sample scene. You can see exactly what your scenes are named down here. If I just click here, sample scene, and it has to be spelled with the capital S and the capital S, just like that when you type it in here. And we can put a loading texture that it will show while it loads. This, as I'm aware, can't be an animation. That can be done, a loading bar, but I'm not sure it can be done with this command. So that's very simple. I call the load block and I call wait until finished loading. And I don't know why, but I called the menu again. Let me just turn off this command for now and see why I did that. This shouldn't make any difference. And then we have the new game option, yes or no. If you press no, you return to the menu. And then I have this say command down here. I turned off fade when done and wait for click, so it stays put while we decide between our two menu options, so that the player always gets this message: you're going to overwrite your saved game, or whatever you want this message to be. They will receive it while they're making their decision, new game or not. And here, as you see, we're going to load the first scene in our game. This load command we will update, and we will show how to pass variables. Like, if you're in another scene, we'll pass a variable to be like, the player load variable which scene is the player in, send the player to, if scene equals 1, send them to sample scene. If scene equals 2, then send them to scene 2. That's what we'll do with the load variable command, and we'll make sure to set a variable called scene every time we enter a new scene and save that variable into the variable scene and then load that variable. So that's how you would make a load command like this work with the old save system that we did last video with just the load variable and save variable commands. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to make a Boolean and I'm going to name it. And I'm just going to name it new game, and that should be good. I'm going to make it public because I'm scared that if it's not, I won't be able to save it, and maybe that's not true. So let's go ahead and test that. That's what this is for. After I press new game, I'm going to go ahead and set my new game variable to true, and I am going to save my new game variable so I can load it in our next scene. There we go. If I went in and I pressed new game right now, or I pressed load right now, we would not load the sample scene. And this is why. This description down here loads a new Unity scene and displays an optional loading image, which I'll just put one in here as well. This will be a very giant pixelated dog. This is useful for splitting a large game across multiple scene files to reduce peak memory usage. Previously loaded assets will be released before loading the scene to free up memory. This will help with your game's performance if you find that the scene is getting really big and the load time is getting really slow, or the performance of the game is getting really slow. You might want to split that big scene up into 2 scenes. The scene to be loaded must be added to the scene list in build settings. This is probably the most important part. And this is how you get to build settings. We'll go up here to File, and we'll go to Build Settings. And we are going to want to add our main menu to the build, and we're going to want it to be 0, so that when we build our game, here, build and run, when we make our game into its own standalone piece of software, we want the main menu to be the first scene, the 0th scene to open up. So we want to add the main menu to the build first. So I'm going to go ahead and save this scene, and I am going to open the Monkey Island scene that we were working on, and I am going to go up here to File, Build Settings, and I am going to add Sample Scene to our build. And now here, yes, in our start block, when we load the scene, this will perform actions that we want to happen when we load back up our scene. If we already have the ticket, we want to make sure that we have the ticket in our inventory, etc., etc. Different parameters that you want to load that the player has saved with their save button in their inventory. And we are going to add a new variable here to match our new game variable. I'm going to name it the exact same thing, and I'm going to set it to private too, just to test the theory. And I'm going to make a new load variable command here, and I'm going to load the variable new game into our variable here in this scene called new game. And here I'm just going to say, I'm going to make an if statement, and I'm going to put the end on it. If new game is true, then we want to set all of our variables back to the state that they start in, right here, their default state. Location equals 0, spirit sucked equals false, door opened equals false, has ticket equals false. Because we haven't done anything in this scene yet if we have a new game. So I'm going to go here and set all those variables to their default state. Spirit suck equals false, door opened equals false, has ticket equals false, and I don't know if we did load the location variable, and I want it to be 0. And after I've set all of these, I'm going to save all of them, because we are overwriting our old save officially right here and right now. And I'm going to save the variables one by one, just like this. Okay, so this is how we are going to make a new game. Simple as that. And with our load scene command, we can go ahead and add a scene variable here to demonstrate what I was saying with the load game command. I'll have this be capital scene, and I will go ahead here at the very top before I do anything and set scene, although scene shouldn't be a boolean, my bad. It should be an integer, because we will be counting the number of scenes in our games like normal people count things with integers. I'm going to name this scene 1 because that makes the most sense to me. If you're a coder, you might want to start with 0 because that's the way that coding counts lists. But I'm going to go ahead and set this as scene number 1. And right after that, I'm going to save this so that when we load our game, we know what scene we were in when we saved. Although we still have our manual save system up from last time. So I am going to go ahead and cut this save variable scene into here, into our save game button block. But if you wanted to autosave, you would just do it right here when you set it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play around in our Monkey Island scene just a little bit so that we have some variables to reset when the time comes. Okay, now that I have done a few things in the game, made a save file, I'm going to go back to the main menu and we are going to test out its functionality. First of all, here we would want to, in our load block, we would want to load the scene variable, spelled exactly like that. We'll want to create a new integer here named scene, and by default it will be set to 0 because we're in the main menu. And really, let's be honest, the main menu is the 0th scene of the game. So we want to load that in, and you know, we would actually want to load in the scene variable when we start the game. So I'm just going to cut that, and I'm going to, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load the variable scene into scene. And what this will do is, if the player doesn't have a save file, then scene will be equal to 0. So if scene equals 0, then we will show them the load game button. But if it doesn't, then there will be no load game button. So let's give that a try. And then in here, if we had more than one scene, we would do something like this. If scene equals 1, then load sample scene. But else if scene equals 2, then we would load another scene. You'd put the name in, obviously. And then when you were done with your big list, you'd put an end command. So that's how the load feature hypothetically works. So let's try and use said load feature. We do not have a load game button because I did this if statement wrong. We want if scene is not equal to 0. So let's go and change that, because if scene equals 0 is the only time when we don't want to see the load game button, because that means we haven't played the game yet. Welcome to the best game. I am going to load my game. There's my sweet dog. And as you can see, I've already opened the door here. I have my ticket. And different parameters that we had already done have already been set. As you can see, the new game thing is false. Scene equals 1. I have the ticket. The door is opened, but I have not sucked the spirit. So it has loaded the things that I wanted it to load. Now let's go back and start a new game and see what happens. I am sure. And wow, a brand new game. I don't have the ticket. I have not opened the door. And new game is true. We would probably want to set new game to false so that it knows the next time we load this scene that it's not a new game anymore. And we want to save that variable. So let's do that to finish off our very very basic main menu. We'd obviously want to add like an options menu if we needed, but this is the very basics of how to send information from scene to scene very easily, I think, and very customizably. So let's go ahead and duplicate that set variable command. We're going to set new game to false, and we're also going to save that so that we don't perpetually destroy our save file every time we load up the first scene of the game. And that's that. Okay, that's it for this video. If you want to see like an options settings button on the menu or in the inventory, etc., etc., I would be interested in hearing what settings you're interested in, like music volume, sound effects volume. Fungus has those 3 audio channels: music, ambience, and sound effects. I could be wrong. You could control the volume of those things in the options menu. Font sizes and stuff like that would be very difficult to make happen, but that is a accessibility thing that would be great if I was able to crack the code on. So just let me know if you're interested in this settings menu, this options menu, and let me know what you want me to research and figure out. And okay, bye. Stay jolly.